The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Terry McLaurin is officially holding out, and no matter how the team spins it, this is the first real crisis of the Adam Peters era.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's all going to start off with Terry McLaurin's holdout officially beginning on Tuesday and the countdown to contract resolution. All of that's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code Locked On NFL at monarchmoney.com/LockedOnNFL for 50% off your first year. Terry McLaurin did not show up by the deadline Tuesday for veterans to show up and participate in training camp, and that silence speaks louder than anything Adam Peters told us Tuesday morning about the negotiations and the ongoing situation with Terry McLaurin. So here are the basic facts of the situation going on with Terry McLaurin. Did not report for his mandatory conditioning test on Tuesday, which means he's officially beginning his holdout. He's the only player on the Washington Commanders roster that is not present for training camp. So all rookies, all other vets are present. They did what they're supposed to do. The holdout, as you probably know by now, related to his desire for a new contract. And it could be either an extension, it could be a total new contract that even reworks the current year. There are several options involved there, but the common terminology being used is extension, which means money added on to his contract, which expires after the 2025 NFL season. So one of the questions I've been getting from a lot of people is, how much should we panic now, right? Because in the beginning of the offseason, when this whole thing started, I was telling you guys, I think we're good. I don't have any worries that they're going to get a deal done. Feel pretty confident in that. Adam Peters has said publicly, other people, Dan Quinn, Lance Newmark, said publicly that Terry McLaurin is an important part of the franchise, the organization. Everybody understands his value. So really didn't see a problem coming. Once he didn't participate in OTAs, mandatory minicamp, still no panic there, right? So, okay, pretty confident things are going to go pretty well. And I even remember saying like around July 15th is probably the moment, right? People are kind of breaking, going on little mini vacations, things like that. And this team likes to do things the right way. So you're not going to bring Terry in to sign a contract with nobody in the building. So around July 15th, around July 15th, Terry McLaurin decided to go public with his frustration, his feelings of disrespect. That changed things a little bit. I'm still confident that I think Terry McLaurin plays for the Burgundy and Gold this year, but obviously there's some tension here and there's some hurt feelings and there's some separation between the two sides and all these things. So with him holding out of training camp, it's a little bit of a different page to this story. Right now, my meter's probably at about a 6 out of 10 right now. And that's certainly up from where it was before because this is a holdout. It's not a hold in. If it was a hold in, I'd feel like, okay, they're probably pretty close. Like Terry wants to be nearby if they got to go put, pen to paper and do all these things. But a holdout really kind of signals that you're not really close, at least close enough to have some like goodwill here for Terry and the team. And this, like I said, is the first real crisis, if you want to call it that. And crisis might even be a little bit overblown, but this is the real first true conflict that this team has had to go through with Adam Peters at the controls of the franchise. So that's really going to be, this is going to be your first kind of sample of how Adam Peters is going to be as a general manager. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. It's not higher than 6 because it's just day one of training camp tomorrow. It's not, we're still not in the point where like Terry is missing critically important parts of the install and all these things. Like these guys are installing things that Terry probably already knows and all this stuff. So I'm not really worried about that. So you just still have some time, I think, until you start to get worried about that specifically. I think you're talking early August, right? So where's the disconnect here? So the disconnect obviously is in the contract, right? Currently, Terry McLaurin's contract gives him around $23 million annual average value, which has been surpassed by the top of the wide receiver market, which every contract eventually gets surpassed. You understand that. But right now you've got deals in the wide receiver market exceeding $30 million per year. And you even have a number 2 receiver for one NFL team, the Cincinnati Bengals, making more than Terry is making as the number one receiver. And that certainly is part of what has kind of sparked this whole thing. Now, this action and Adam Peters' words, I don't want to say they don't jive, right? Because you could certainly be having some good conversations, right? Adam Peters told us on Tuesday morning that they were having some good conversations, continue to have some good conversations. And I think the encouraging thing here is AP saying very specifically, like, it's everybody's intent to get this deal done. Like, that's the intent, is to get this deal done. So there's not like a we'll wait and see, or, he's got to do this, or he's got, like, the intent is to get the contract done. And there's good conversations. But again, like I said, with the holdout, you just kind of have the feeling like it's not good enough, or maybe they're good conversations, but Terry's like, hey guys, like, we should have been having these good conversations a month ago. So it's too little too late. I'm not coming until we get this thing done. You should have opened up the door to these conversations sooner. That's always certainly a possibility. So how far apart are they? Well, we don't have hard numbers, official numbers for what Terry is asking for, what the team is offering. You assume with Adam Peters publicly saying we're trying to get this deal done, that they probably made an offer, but we don't actually know for sure what those offers are. The speculation that we can give, the best speculation we can give, and I want to make 100% sure everybody understands it's speculation, is they're probably $2 to $3 million apart on the annual average value. It's the guarantees typically that are far apart, like maybe $10 to $15 million range, right? And here's the analytical speculation behind how we got to that number, right? It's basically an educated inference, which is the adult way of saying educated guess, right? So it's an educated guess, but it's based on history, right? It's based on history and what is most likely to cause tension in these types of conversations, right? So you look at the precedent for contract negotiations, and in almost every modern NFL contract dispute, you go back to A.J. Brown, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, and Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel are two contract disputes that Adam Peters was at least on the staff as part of those conflicts, right? The final hurdle is rarely annual average value. Usually the hurdle is guaranteed money and just terms of the overall contract structure. So I think that's probably where we're at with the Washington Commanders, because again, Adam Peters said on Tuesday, quote, we're having some good conversations, end quote. If you're $10 million away on the annual average value, you're probably not having good conversations, right? You're going to say, yeah, we're talking, we're working, we're trying to come to it, but to have, we're having good conversations typically probably means you're probably fairly close on the annual average value. You're just not close on the guarantees, or at least close enough on the guarantees. A full holdout by a guy who prides himself on being a team leader, being a good soldier, being the guy who, always has a smile on his face, even in the toughest moments, like that adds a little bit to this. Like Terry, like to kind of put it in the way, like Terry's not really the guy you would expect to do this. So the fact that he's doing it again kind of signifies that there's probably a pretty decent gap between where the Commanders are guarantee wise and where Terry McLaurin is guarantee wise. But then again, just trying to read between the lines with AP saying there's good conversations means they probably have the total number and the average annual value of the contract fairly close, if not set. It's now we're talking what's guaranteed, what's incentives, what's signing bonus, what's workout bonus, what's this, what's that, right? So if you're using realistic expectations on this, while there's no numbers being reported, the sticking point of these deals usually has to do with guarantees. And I always kind of go back to Le'Veon Bell leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then years later kind of reflecting and saying, there was $2 million that I wanted guaranteed. They didn't want to guarantee the $2 million. They wouldn't budge. I wouldn't budge. I ended up leaving. He ended up sitting out a whole season, going to the New York Jets, and then he basically just fell apart from there, right? Just wasn't ever the same. And looking back on it, he wishes he would have just taken the deal, $2 million less in guaranteed, kind of bet on yourself type of deal. Go out there, earn that money, earn that $2 million, right? Because it's not like if it's not guaranteed, it's not earnable. It's certainly earnable. I think that's kind of where Terry maybe is feeling the strain of like not being valued. Like, I think I deserve you being willing to guarantee more of the contract instead of you making me go chase the carrot. Just give me the carrot and trust that I'm going to do good by that, right? So some of the ripple effects here, obviously you have Jaden Daniels, the relationship between quarterback and receiver, very important. I'm not super concerned about it right now. Again, like I said, because that relationship was super strong. Jaden is not going to be bothered by this. He's not going to go out there and be like, well, I'm not going to throw Terry the ball as much as he held out for a little bit. That's not going to happen. Locker room effect, a team captain. Obviously, he's got some influence, but as far as like creating dissent, like I don't think that's going to be a problem. There's enough leaders in this locker room that missing Terry, while you would love to have him out there, it's not going to like tear the locker room apart. And then preparation. I think joint practice. If Terry isn't in New England for the August 6th joint practice, that's when I will get worried. Like that's when like my panic meter is probably gonna hit like an 8. You know what I mean? If we don't have a trade request by then that's probably where my panic meter personally would probably hit about an 8. And then after that, like following, once he starts missing some preseason games and some joint practices, then you start getting worried about the ramp up to the season and the entire situation. So that's kind of where we are with Terry McLaurin right now. Captain, holding out, a veteran that everyone is eager to see out there.
Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right in the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
There was a glimmer of hope on Monday, but early Tuesday, Trey Hendrickson made his holdout clear, and the Bengals are going to have to get there on guarantees.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
Trey Hendrickson, James, as he has left the state after Mike Brown expressed some optimism and shared his opinion that he thought it would get done, that he wanted to get it done, that he thought Trey wanted to get it done. It did not happen, unfortunately, between the last time we recorded and now as we talk in the early afternoon on Tuesday.
Holdout. Officially a holdout. Not going to be present tomorrow for their first practice on Wednesday of camp. It's expected. It's what it is. It's expected. I don't think anyone should overreact. Naturally, on social media, people are overreacting, and that's fine. It didn't feel like it was imminent. I think Mike Brown gave us his thoughts, but I never felt like during that, even if you felt optimistic, and I think we both did, that things were close, like really close. At least I didn't think it was really close and about to get done. And I would have been surprised and I will be surprised if we see Trey until the deal is done. And I think that this is what he's saying. That's why he posted the Instagram story, tagged Florida with the sunrise on Tuesday. Lets everyone know, hey, I'm in Florida.
What a funny thing to tag in an Instagram post, by the way. Florida.
Well, it's just he didn't want people to know where he lives, right? What city? Fun.
Florida.
No doubt. Yeah. Welcome to Florida, where the Bengals apparently have training camp. No. Or Texas for Shamar. Oh, no, wait. I think this is one of those things that, and you asked this yesterday, like, will Trey respond? And Trey responded. All the reporting around it, I think it's very clear. Trey has made his stance on what he wants, what he's looking for. And it's clear that the guaranteed dollars aren't there. I'm not sure that they're there anywhere when it comes to an extension right now, in the Bengals and Trey. I'm not sure they've agreed to average annual value. I don't necessarily think that the years part is going to be a huge hurdle, but it is a hurdle, especially when you're talking about guaranteed money being the biggest hurdle. And everyone has reported that. Not shocked given the Bengals' history, but this is where they are. And so I'm not going to fret as we record this on July 22nd about Trey not being there for day one of training camp on Wednesday, because he's not going to be there, barring something really unforeseen. I don't really think that's a big deal. I do know, and I can back this up, Trey does want to get a deal done. Absolutely. So Mike Brown is right there. Mike clearly wants to get a deal done. He said it to everybody. And so it's going to be about these two sides bending some. When will that happen is my question. I don't care that Trey's not in camp in the third week of July, essentially, in the first week of camp, but I do want him there a month from now. I do think it's going to start to matter as we get closer toward the games mattering. And so that would be my my focus. If I'm the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson, he's got to stay ready. I have no doubt that he will. And the Bengals, they have to figure out the way to find common ground here, because I do think that it's more on their end of not being willing to give the guarantees that Trey's looking for.
And I'm sure Trey will hit the ground running. I'm with you there. But I do think that while it's not necessarily a change, like this is kind of expected and it's not something to panic over, it's still far from ideal, right? Like we're not saying that it's good. We're not saying that everything is fine when we say it's not something to panic over, because ideally when you have a new defensive coordinator and you're doing things a little bit differently, you have everyone there so everyone's on the same page. And so the coordinators and the coaches can figure out, okay, we have Trey Hendrickson. This is how things look with Trey. This is how we can mold things around Trey, with having seen him go through the things on the field, instead of just speculating on how he's going to fit based on what he put on tape last year, based on what you think Trey Hendrickson is, and probably reasonably can expect Trey Hendrickson to be. But that also goes for Shamar Stewart. That's why it's important to have everyone as present as they can be. More important for Shamar, for reasons that we've discussed. We don't need to go into those today. But while it's not necessarily a shock that it's gotten to this point, it's not a good place to be. It's very far from ideal, obviously, and it's not where you want to be. To have him not there physically is one thing. To have the distraction is another issue with this. To have this, sixth straight year, it feels like, I don't know, infinite straight year of something that you're dealing with in training camp from a contract perspective for an important player, not something that you want to deal with, is exhausting for fans. I can tell you that for sure, based on the response that we saw on Tuesday. And it's not surprising that that's a response. They've been dealing with this stuff for years. And the concern then becomes, well, if the issue is guaranteed money, let's say they did get there on APY in years, and there's not a great reason to think they did. It sounds like they moved on APY in years. It sounds like the money did go up. The years may have gone up. If the issue is guarantees and they were dealing, okay, well, the years did go up, because if the issue is guarantees now, primarily, that's what's been reported on Tuesday. And previously, they were offering one-year deals, which was reported, I think, on Sunday. Well, if you're talking about guarantees past year one, you're probably talking about a multi-year deal at that point. So it sounds like they moved on years. If the issue is guarantees primarily, it sounds like they moved on money too. But the concern then is they never budged on guarantees for Jesse Bates. And at the time, we were thinking about the Mulligetta thing. We're thinking about, this is a precedent breaker for the Bengals. But now the Bengals have broken that precedent on non-quarterback contracts. And they did so not just for Jamar Chase, but also for T. Higgins. And from Trey's perspective, and I don't say any of this to rag on T, from Trey's perspective, they gave year 2 guaranteed money to T. Higgins after T. Higgins has been injured. Much more than Trey Hendrickson has been injured in terms of missing games, right? Trey's perspective is he was just second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, has all the sack numbers to back it up. And if T can get that, well, shouldn't I get that if I'm Trey Hendrickson? I imagine that's part of the thinking there, in addition to the consistent frustration we've heard from him over the years around not having guarantees that's left him in limbo. And that's why, given their history, it's not surprising that they're at this point. And I have concern that about how it plays out, given their history with guarantees outside of year one.
There's a lot there. I think, first of all, when it comes to the guarantee element, I know for a fact Trey's camp took notice of T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, obviously, and we knew that was going to happen, but T. Higgins also getting guarantees. And Mike Brown hinted at that on Monday towards the end. It almost felt like a pie conversation. And it's the video I posted on YouTube. And right before he felt like he was going to the pie discussion, he's like, well, you give out this much, and then other people want the same amount, the same thing, and kind of hinted at the style of it and not necessarily just the salary. And that's it. That's probably what he's referring to, is the guaranteed element of it.
Indiana head football coach Curt Cignetti made massive headlines during Big Ten Media Days for calling out the SEC.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, Your team every day.
Everybody, and I mean everybody, is talking about is your head man, your head coach, Curt Cignetti, took the stage at Big Ten Media Days. And we knew somebody was going to ask this sort of a question right about the recent cancellation with the home and home with the Virginia Cavaliers. And it's something that has kind of gone under the radar a little bit. Not a ton of people talked about it, but we figured a question would come about it. And I said yesterday on the show, if you listened or watched the show yesterday that we put out here on Locked On Hoosiers, I'm going to take claim that I was right. Kind of. I said that Curt Cignetti was going to make a statement at Big Ten Media Days because he always does. In this sort of a situation, man, he comes off as a guy that doesn't like the spotlight, but he loves the spotlight, okay? He loves these sort of situations and these times to be the focus of attention, to be the one with all the say, all the power, with the microphone in his hand. And I said on the show yesterday that Cignetti was going to make a statement at Big Ten Media Days. Now, the statement that I predicted was incorrect. I said that he would make a statement that they would go on the road to beat Oregon or Penn State just to call one of those teams out around the conference. Instead, Curt Cignetti went for a bigger fish. He went for a bigger fan base, and that is one of the Southeastern Conference. Somebody asked him on the stand. They said, you guys recently announced that you canceled a future home and home series with Virginia. Can you talk about why that happened? And here's what Curt Cignetti had to say. This is verbatim. This is the transcript. Are you ready? He says, quote, look, here's the bottom line. We picked up an extra home game and we played 9 conference games. The 2 best conferences in college football, if anybody would tell you, it's the Big Ten and the SEC. 12 of the 16 SEC teams play 3 G5 or an FCS game. 12 of those teams play 36 games, 29 G5 games, and 7 FCS games, and 1 less conference game. He goes on, and this is the statement that got him in trouble. He says, so we figured we would just adopt the SEC scheduling philosophy. Boom. Mic drop. Place is like, oh, snap. That goes viral. Everybody tweets it out and everybody starts losing their minds. He says again, so we figured we would just adopt the SEC scheduling philosophy. Yikes, man. That is unbelievable that he stepped up there and had the stones to say something like that, because man, did he make some enemies around the Southeastern Conference. Let me finish his thought here. He says, some people don't like it. I'm more focused in on those 9 conference games. Not only do we want to play 9 conference games and have the 4-4 championship, the playoff format, we want to have play-in games to decide who plays in those college football playoffs. More on that in just a moment. But the fact that Curt Cignetti decided to go up there and, again, have the nads, if you will, to call out the Southeastern Conference for how they schedule, the fact that they don't play 9 conference games and they'd rather just play weak FCS G5 teams. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, I don't know how Mr. Petitti feels about it, the Big Ten commissioner, but I love the idea that Cignetti just says, I don't care. I've got something on my mind. You asked me about it, so I'm going to tell you how I feel. And I love that from our head football coach, because he has proven that in his very short time being here at Indiana, but I think he's proven that over his entire career. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what you think. He doesn't care what you say. He doesn't care what you write. He doesn't care what I say. If he's got something on his mind, he's going to say it. And I like that he took a stance on this. And the fact of the matter is, he's probably one of the few in the Big Ten across the board that's willing to stand up there in the biggest media event of the year and answer that question the way that he did and call out the Southeastern Conference while doing so. I think everybody across college football pretty much agreed with what he had to say, unless you're one of the 16 teams in the college football or in the SEC. Those fans lost their minds. They could not stand to be called out the way that they did. And I saw a bunch of people, right, calling him out and saying, what does the head coach of Indiana have to do with any of this? How does he have a say in what's going on? What they have one good year and all of a sudden they feel invincible. Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, he's had more than just one good year in his resume, but Curt Cignetti just doesn't care, man. And the fact that he was able to go up there, answer the question, and be honest about it, and then kind of defend it a little bit by laying out what he wants to the end of the season to look like with playing games and the playoff and things like that. More on that in a moment. I love that from our head coach, because now, if you hadn't already or you didn't feel this way yet, you do now from the outside looking in. Curt Cignetti is must-see TV, man. Curt Cignetti, when he speaks, you listen. And there are coaches, very few around our sport that are that way. But I think Curt Cignetti's starting to earn that. And hopefully some of his Big Ten brethren are going to back him up the rest of the way of this week, because there's still some to go today and some to go tomorrow. I loved it. I absolutely loved it, because somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to continue to hammer home to the SEC that you must play 9 conference games like everybody else. You're not special. I don't care that you play Vanderbilt, okay, and Kentucky on your schedule. That doesn't matter to me. Play an extra game. Play an extra game. Let's play some conference versus conference. That's my whole suggestion. I've been saying that for a while. My buddy Spencer McLaurin, I think, is in agreement with me. I've locked on college football, where let's play 9 conference games across the board every season in every conference, in the major conferences, right? Big Ten, SEC, play 9. And then your 10th game of the season is against the other conference. Why don't we have the SEC and the Big Ten make a deal like an SEC Big Ten challenge like we see in basketball, and Indiana plays Tennessee. All right, we'll play them in Knoxville, then they'll come and see us in Bloomington. All right, the next year, Indiana's going to play Alabama. All right, cool. We'll go to Tuscaloosa, and then Alabama can come here to Bloomington. And you put it on a 2-year rotator, and then you have your extra big-time game, and all these hypothetical matchups that the SEC loves to talk about that they feel they're undefeated in, we can actually have some of those play out on the field. That's my suggestion. And there's more on that as we go, but I love Curt Cignetti. Clearly, I love Curt Cignetti and what he's doing and the way that he represents IU, the way he represents the Big Ten. And I'm just glad that he, unlike most, had what it takes to step up there, call out Greg Sankey, and call out the big dogs in the Southeastern Conference. Good for you, Curt Cignetti.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Carson Beck takes the reins as Miami's new quarterback one.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes.
First and foremost, Carson, how you liking Miami, the whole city, everything that comes with that so far?
Man, I love it. Obviously, it's a big city, a great culture as far as the football team goes. And, you know, being around Coach Cristobal, being around the guys, it's been awesome.
And Coach reminded me that this is kind of a full circle thing for you, because you were briefly committed to Miami, you know, out of high school at Mandarin, and now you find yourself a Hurricane. Do you ever kind of look back and reflect on those times?
Well, just being from Florida in general, to, you know, ultimately come back home and be in the state where I grew up in, it's very exciting. I'm very, very much looking forward to getting into fall camp, you know, getting out there with the guys and finally being able to practice and just ultimately lead us into the season.
You know, everybody's curious to know how you're doing physically. You know, the last time we saw you in a game, you had the injury, you've had the surgery. Like, how is the elbow and how is everything from that standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it's doing great. I've been 100% for a while. Obviously, that journey was difficult. It was tough. and it's very challenging physically, mentally, in all aspects. And then ultimately changing schools as well through that, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot thrown on my plate, but I have a really good support system, and coming down to this school and how accepting the guys have been, how accepting the coaches have been, have really made that transition simultaneous for me. And I think ultimately helped me as, I was trying to get back into it and ultimately fully recovered the injury.
So for these last, couple months for you, since you've had all the full clearance, you've been throwing, you've been working out, what have these workouts been like for you? And have you had a chance to get together with the guys you're going to be throwing to this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our off season has been awesome. Coach Irv stepped in for us, as far as like the strength and conditioning side of things. The conditioning has been tough. It's hot down there in Miami.
Yes,
the humidity is killer. But man, we've been working as a team. And then outside of that, from more of a player-led perspective and our player-led practices and things like that, being able to get in reps with the wide receivers, the tight ends, the running backs. We're having meetings where, I'm leading the meetings and, the wide receivers are in there. We're going over the intricacies of routes and, progressions and what I'm seeing so that they can see the same thing. Just trying to rapidly build that chemistry, which I think we've done really well. And not only does that come from my side, but I think it comes from their side as well, right? The attention to detail, the focus, the mindset and mentality that wide receiver group has, right? Because the more, susceptible they are to, gaining information and wanting to learn, the better we're going to be. And I think that their mentality has been right on track with that.
Talk to me about some of these guys, from CJ Daniels to JoJo Trader to other guys who were in that room. Just tell me about kind of what makes these guys tick and what makes them special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing is kind of what I just said, is that mentality piece, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that have something to prove, and that pushes them, right? Not only from that aspect, but also just wanting to learn and be the best that they possibly can be, and putting full trust in me to, help them and teach them, and then ultimately them teaching me as well from their perspective, right? So, it's kind of this like give and take from the wide receiver group and me, and, just ultimately trying to be the best that we can be, and, meeting at the top of the pyramid.
So, you, of course, come from a marquee program in Georgia, and obviously that there's a certain way that things are done up there. So like how different is it in Miami, and how much of sort of your mentality that you've built the last few years, how much of that have you been able to translate here in Coral Gables?
Yeah, absolutely. Being at Georgia for 5 years.
That many years, huh?
5 years.
Time flies, man.
It does fly. But obviously the culture and what Coach Smart has built at Georgia is one of its own. And I'm super thankful to have been a part of that, right? And learn from a guy like him. I wouldn't be the player that I am without him being a coach of me, right? And in more ways than just football, but also just being a man and in life and all those things, and learning life lessons through all the years that I was there, right? But, now being in Miami, being able to take, what I learned there and my experiences and playing in big games and being around top players that are now excelling in the NFL, right? Just being able to take my experience and, bring it to Miami and, try to lead these younger guys that are here and, establish and, kind of mesh into the culture that's already been built at Miami and what Coach Cristobal has been building over the past couple of years. It's been a lot of fun. And, I'm excited to, continue, building that, with this team.
Something that I imagine made, playing at Miami appealing to you, not to put words in your mouth, but that offensive line, it's expected to be one of the better units in the entire country. Carson, what are your impressions, your early looks on, from guys like CC Maui Noah, who's here, Big Markel Bell, who's going to be covering your blind side? How confident do you feel in that O-line?
Yeah. You look at them and they're huge, right? They fit the part, they fit the eye test, they pass it very well. But what I love about them is we get done with our PLPs or our workouts and the whole O-line's out there getting an extra work, right?
Good.
So not only looking at them where it's like, oh my gosh, like I can't wait to play behind these guys, but you see the work that they put in, not only like in our allotted time, but the extra overtime, right? And then I believe we have one of the best O-line coaches in the country, and the way that he's able to push those guys and the way that they respect him and trust him. The sky's the limit for them, and they lead this team for sure.
transitioning into Shannon Dawson's offense, how similar is it, to what you were in Georgia, and what are some aspects of that offense, without giving away too many trade secrets, of course, that are appealing to you as a quarterback?
Of course. Well, I mean, offense is offense at the end of the day, right? Most people run the same concepts, the same run schemes, right? There's inside zone, there's duo, there's counter, there's power, there's outside zone, mid zone. I mean, all these different run schemes, right? And then there's your pass schemes, right? That everybody runs. You got your 4 verticals, your mesh, your cross, I could go on and on and on, right? But I don't know. Really, what I've loved about Coach Dawson is his demeanor and the way that he approaches coaching us, right? Obviously, he hasn't really had the opportunity to coach me yet on the field, right? Because I wasn't practicing during spring, and then summer is a lot of player-led stuff, right? But just, observing him and how he approaches it, I really, really love. Obviously, as we get into the season and I learn more about how he game plans and how he calls things from a schematic standpoint, that'll be, us building throughout the season. Obviously, I haven't been around him for that because I haven't ever had a season underneath him. But I'm really excited to, continue to learn from him and ultimately get coached by him this season.
What are your team goals for this year? Is this something you guys have talked about, or how do you look at the season coming up, Carson?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is just trying to take things just one step at a time. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned throughout my career, honestly, is just one day, try to get better today. And then when tomorrow comes, we'll get better tomorrow, So obviously the next thing in sight is fall camp for us. So I think if we have a really, really elite fall camp, it'll set us up for this season. We have a great schedule. We're really excited about it. We're playing some really good teams. But yeah, if we can have an elite fall camp, I think it'll really set us up for the rest of the season.
Now, talk to me about that running back room. I was just chatting with Coach Cristobal about it. When you've got Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle and Marty Brown, who transfers into a lot of personal excitement from me. I think he's a great player. Wheatley Humphrey, Gerard Pringle. I mean, I would expect this can be a really balanced offense this year.
Oh, absolutely. And then you pair it with that O-line, like I said, that, leads the way of this team with very talented backs. It makes my job a lot easier, which I'm more than excited about, right? I have no problem with sitting there and handing the ball off and watching them go get 5, 6. Then in the third, fourth quarter, those 5-6 yard runs are 10, 12. Next thing you know, breakaway, right? That makes my job easy when we have a good run game. They're more influenced to stack the box. It opens up the pass, right? Offense works in that way. It's like a chess match, right? You take what the defense is giving you, and when we're able to run the ball efficiently, it ultimately opens up the pass game. So
now, I don't know if Cuban coffee was a part of your life in Athens, Georgia.
It is
in
now.
Jacksonville. I was about to say, I'm sure Coach Cristobal got you into that.
Absolutely. I'm a huge coffee guy in general. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, since I've been down in Miami, I have been introduced to Cuban coffee, and it now runs my life. So.
Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same game parlay or watching a bet right in the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
It was a shocker when the New Orleans Saints announced that Tyrann Mathieu would be retiring from the NFL.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast.
The New Orleans Saints star safety Tyrann Mathieu has announced his retirement, and now every eye seems to be turning to rookie third-round safety Jonas Senker and third-year safety Jordan Howden to figure out who's going to lead the way at the position next to veteran and recently acquired safety Justin Reed. Let's start off with the implications of the retirement. A lot of people want to know what's going to happen with the cap and all this. $1.53 million is saved this year, and about $2.5 million comes off the books next year in 2026 when it comes to his dead cap. That's it. That's the savings. It's not a huge amount of savings. Remember, Tyrann Mathieu already redid his contract earlier in the offseason, added a bunch of incentives for playing time and all those other things. And so a lot of the money on his deal was already saved at an earlier point in the offseason. Now, the next thing becomes, in terms of implications, who takes his role on the field and what exactly might his role have been in Brandon Staley's defense? Well, it was going to be a versatile role, right? Not just covering, but also playing down in the box, manning the run, probably lining up on the line of scrimmage every now and then to rush the passer, all of those pieces. And so you've got to find somebody that has that sort of multiple nature to their game. And so you're looking at young guys like Jordan Howden, as well as Jonas Sanker, the rookie from this year, drafted in the 3rd round out of Virginia, who is extremely versatile and has a lot of flexibility to his game. Terrell Burgess, somebody that already has some familiarity with Brandon Staley and also has some flexibility to his game. Ugo Amadi as well. JT Gray, a longstanding veteran who has seen more as a special teams asset than a defensive asset. And then, of course, Elliott Davison, who was brought in this offseason from UTSA as an undrafted free agent. So the Saints have still a lot of options in terms of who's going to compete to line up next to Justin Reed. But the one thing that none of those guys will be able to replace is perhaps the thing that made Tyrann Mathieu so special, and that's the leadership. Remember, Tyrann Mathieu is the guy partway through the season a couple years ago that got up in front of the team and talked about how they needed how the turnaround for this team needs to start with the defense. And in particular, it's got to start with the secondary. Challenge the secondary before they went out up against Tampa Bay Buccaneers and got like 4+ interceptions in that game, 3+ takeaways in that game. And he was the guy that after Dennis Allen was canned last year, he was the guy that was like, put it all on me. I'm the one, and all this other stuff. He's talked with our good friend Brooke Kirchhoffer, sportscaster and sports broadcaster, this offseason, right around Super Bowl week, about how he thought he still had another 2 or 3 years of high standard, high quality, up to his standard type football left to play. And so certainly something has changed. We spoke with general manager Mickey Loomis as well as head coach Kellen Moore on Tuesday, and both of them indicated that the decision about Tyrann Mathieu's retirement really kind of escalated over the course of the last couple of days. And so I think that with all of these pieces, there's a lot here to figure out in terms of, or not really a lot to figure out, but it kind of pushed things a little bit further. Like clearly something changed for Tyrann Mathieu over the course of this offseason. So with that being the case, the next thing that you're looking at is a real opportunity here for some of these young players to come in and stand in, at least on the field. But replacing Tyrann Mathieu as a leader and his leadership, that's going to be a very challenging thing for this defense. But it does thrust this team even further into rebuild conversation, transition year conversation. I mean, even Mickey Loomis really kind of lightened up on the idea of we understand this is a transition year kind of language and everything during his presser. And so I think the reality is setting in around a lot of this that, hey, it's okay to have good aspirations and high aspirations, but that won't always equate to the expectations, right? And so seeing exactly where things go for this team over the course of this year with Tyrann Mathieu's retirement probably just got a little bit more kind of digestible in terms of the full spectrum of things that could be possible for this team. And so for New Orleans, they now have to figure out who's going to be that safety that steps in. I think I would advocate new defense, new defensive leaders along the way to roll with the new defensive assets that this coaching staff chose, and that's Justin Reed and Jonas Sanker. I believe that Jordan Howden's a very talented safety, but I don't know if he has the versatility that Jonas Sanker has, who played over 500, over 250 snaps at slot, in the box, and, as a deep safety over the course of his career at Virginia. And so just that level of versatility feels so tailor-made for what it is that Brandon Staley wants to do with his defense, disguise, being able to kind of start in one coverage, but then transition into a different look after the snap, all those other pieces. I think Jonas Sanker just fits that so incredibly well. The Saints can also, should they decide, go to the free agency market to figure this out as well. They could go after another veteran like Julian Blackman. Hi, it's Ross, coming at you from the future. Turns out that Julian Blackman thing that I kind of threw off to the side there was exactly right. Sounds like the New Orleans Saints are signing Julian Blackmon. So as a part of that, we'll definitely come back and take a look at what Julian Blackmon brings to this team going into tomorrow's episode after we see him on the first day of camp. I literally said the name because it's a player that I liked, but didn't think that the Saints would get him, but they did. So we'll break it down tomorrow. Until then, back to your regularly scheduled episode. I think that in between guys like Jonas Sanker and Jordan Howden at the headline, but then also Terrell Burgess, Ugo Amadi, JT Gray, Elliot Davison, like the Saints still have a lot of players to cycle in next to Justin Reed to figure out who's going to be the starter. But if I had to pick a starter today and I'm trying to like read a crystal ball or whatever, I'm probably leaning towards Jonas Sanker. He was a draft pick by one of the first defensive picks by this new coaching staff, and he was drafted this year. He has the versatility. He checks all the boxes. He has the takeaway ability. He has the leadership ability as well. Like, he might not step into a Tyrann Mathieu, Honey Badger sized leadership role right away, but he has leadership at his core, both from his home and also on the field. I think that he just makes a lot of sense. So we'll see. It could be Jonas Sanker time in New Orleans, but I'll tell you what, man, the Honey Badger will absolutely be missed in that locker room. Was always great to talk to, and he will certainly be missed on the field. And aren't we lucky, those of us that had the opportunity to watch him from St. Aug to LSU to his NFL career and then finishing up appropriately back in his hometown and his home city of New Orleans. What a beautiful story I'm still going to say young man because I'm a young man and he's a young man too. So dang it, great stuff for the young man. So really, really excited to see where things go for Tyrann Mathieu. He's got a bright future ahead of him should he decide to go into broadcasting, coaching, maybe even going to LSU to do stuff like that. Like, he's done a lot of those, speaking engagements and everything. Just what an incredible person. And so really, really exciting to see where things go for him next, but certainly is going to be somebody that's going to be missed by this team on the football field.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
The power struggle might be continuing or coming to an end.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast.
You talked about yesterday, one of the key points of the offseason that maybe we thought was going to be a negative has turned out to be a positive so far in Brian Gregory. I have a clip from the 11-minute docu show today that the Suns released on their YouTube channel talking about all things that went on during the NBA draft process. So check this out and tell me what you think, Brendan.
The key BG is, who do you want to take at 41?
We gotta figure this out. Elbow between these two guys, you know what I mean? He's got an NBA skill, and he is 6'7".
That's what makes it tough. I would be fine either way, though. Take a swing at the elite shooter.
And then he's an elite shooter, obviously, at 6'7".
For two ways?
Yeah, these would be two ways. I'm the GM. We'll take Kobe Bryant. You take the best shooter in the country. He's going to be on the two-way. Opens it up for whatever we can get on the free agent market. Hey, Mike, I'm going to give you the name. I'm freaking tired of waiting.
Well, you can give me the name. I can wait if you want me. I can go longer. I can go down like 5.
No. Kobe Bryant, Kentucky.
Brian Gregory, the star of the Phoenix Suns draft night propaganda, showing us only what they want to show us. So we got to keep that in there. And it's a really good watch, an easy 11 minutes to digest on the Suns YouTube channel. Before I ask you the main question, what did you think about that? Brian Gregory, kind of the star of the show.
Well, rightly so, right? I mean,
right. You would think,
as he said. So, yeah, it's also funny in there, like you said, with what we can't see. They don't tell us who they're talking about. Two people. It's clear that it was Brea or somebody, and they allude to it like 2 or 3 different times of the other. Like he says, let's go with this one. And then you can kind of tell there's like a cut where he probably had just been talking about the other guy. And then when he says the free agent thing, he's clearly saying like, we'll fill that skill set in free agency since we're not drafting that guy. And we don't know what that even is. So it's like you're listening to it and then you just want to know more because you're getting a little, you want more. But yeah, I think Brian Gregory is a funny character. That's all I can say. I mean, every time we hear from the guy, it's the accent, the kind of goofiness, whatever. But hey, I mean, I can't argue with the draft class. So I guess, he's the one laughing right now after that summer league.
It's so funny because I've went on a couple of different shows and every single way that I've characterized Brian Gregory as he is the most boring individual ever. But in this, he kind of had a little bit of pep in his step. And it brings me to this, man. You mentioned yesterday that one of the things, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, that seems more of a positive than a negative and maybe not the way we thought, is Brian Gregory feels like he was potentially a home run hire, at least to this point. There's a lot other things we need to get to, and we'll hold him to a higher standard later. But it kind of makes me think, man, Rich Paul was on the phone with Matt Ishbia, but the entire 11-minute series highlighting Brian Gregory shows Brian Gregory was in charge. Who the heck is in charge, man? Or is it a true 50-50 split, and can that work?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's not a coincidence if we're just sort of like getting into the trying to look at it from the perspective of like the Adobe file of the edit of the video in Premiere or whatever, that they have him going, I'm the GM in the video. Like it's not on accident, but I think that the draft is probably going to be the place where we most likely see Gregory's influence shine the most, and probably the place where he'll do the best. I mean, he's a college coach. That's probably what he should be best at. That's probably the thing you hire him to do. And it's probably not a coincidence that you went ahead and did that at the time you did when you know that this roster needs to reset. So it doesn't surprise me to see that. But I'm just not going to waver from. We have so much evidence that Matt Ishbia is the one that is the loudest, most dominant voice in the room. And once again, I'll remind people, a lot of that evidence is from his mouth as recently as last week when he reminded Burns and Gambo that he is going to take a more sizable role. So at this point, you'd be kidding yourself not to say that Matt Ishbia is the end-all, be-all for this team. But yeah, does he know who Kobe Bryant is before June? No. So Brian Gregory probably should be the guy to make the final call on something like that.
It's so funny, man. You took the words right out of my mouth. I call it team propaganda because they put in exactly what they want you to see. Really good. We can react to it in July and it's fun. However, I'm the GM was said almost with his voice shaking as he's looking at Matt Ishbia for approval. I'm not putting any more into that, but like you said, dude, we have so much evidence, and here's some of the evidence even more so. In that video as well, you saw Josh Bartelstein, his grummy little Nepo fingers all over the draft board and asking questions, and I don't know if that's the case, if Brian Gregory has his say. Maybe he likes Josh Bartelstein. That's not the question. It's, would he have picked him on his staff? And it feels like when I'm seeing Josh Bartelstein being a part of the equation, at least in some way, when Matt Ishbia tells me that that's not going to be the case, he said those are his words. Like, it leads me to believe, man, that it is a Matt Ishbia run organization, and they're trying to get us to think this is a Brian Gregory run ship.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Does the social media team or digital content team care what we think? I don't know if they're even trying to get us to think anything. I think that what I do think that there's probably a level of awareness of in that building, though, is that people don't think Brian Gregory deserved the job. People don't think he's ready for the job or that he's going to be good at the job. And so I don't know if it's so much about them trying to do the who's in charge thing as it is this guy. Hey, Summer League just went great. The Suns draft was praised very highly across the board. This is the guy who did it, and he's the one who should be receiving that praise. I think that's all it is.
Mm-hmm. I get it. But I don't think that the media, social media team is directly going out and doing, like, just again, the word propaganda, trying to get us to feel a certain way. However, I do think that they have bosses that are directly linked to the front office that says, we know that this had to be shown to 20 different people before it got leaked to
said
YouTube.
on the air last week that he's in charge. So I don't think they're really
Exactly.
trying to dispel that notion. I think that that's loud and clear. I think that's what it is.
Exactly. But I think it is them not being told, but encouraged, hey, take out the things that show Matt Ishbia maybe doing a little too much bossing around outside of doing the traditional calling of the owner, but maybe prop Brian Gregory up. That's where I think he's going. I don't think that they're saying, hey, do this. I think they're giving them clear directions on what not to do, leaving them with only one road to go down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you're right to point out, like you did at the beginning, that that clip with Ishbia and Rich Paul is, I think those are the types of things that we know. That clip is an example of what we always are kind of wondering about with Ishbia before he just basically told us he was going to be the guy now. Is we were always like, we're not getting the full story. There's clearly more here. Everybody seems to know Ishbia's making the final call, but no one can ever actually pinpoint when that happened or what it looked like or what he said or what happened. That Rich Paul call to me is everything that you had always kind of been wondering about. And I think it's fair to assume that from that point, and maybe this is good. Maybe this is actually a reason to feel decently about all of this. Seems like Rich Paul might have pulled some strings in order to get Malawach here because of that call, because he knew that the Suns were so determined to get him, and because he felt like, hey, there's a wide open hole at center. He probably didn't know Mark Williams was coming to town at that point in time. Rich Paul didn't. But if it's working, it's working. Like, that's the one thing I'll always admit is I don't really care who's calling the shots or a lot of it as long as the stuff works. The only time I've ever brought the hammer down on Matt Ishbia is when it's failed, and we need to point the finger at the failure, and that's when I've, identified that it's him.
Secondary point that I was thinking of when you were saying the whole Malawach Rich Paul situation. Brian Gregory didn't have any idea how to say Kamal Malawach's name in that video. He completely butchered it, which I thought was really funny for a guy that they loved and that they said, granted they didn't have him in for a visit. So I guess that would make sense too. They didn't get the correct pronunciation, but they also said that he was the number 5 guy on their board, which means that obviously they had him ranked pretty highly.